Warning: why you can no longer afford your kids. What if every paycheck you earn quietly pays a Wall Street bill first? Not your 401k, your childcare. If daycare feels like a toll booth between you and your income, ask yourself, who owns that booth and who set the price? Here's the gut punch. In 45 states plus DC, care for 2 kids now costs more than a mortgage. For single parents, care eats roughly 35% of income. That's not a service. That's a mandatory work tax. Today, I'm exposing the institutional grab in childcare, how private equity turns nap time into a cash machine. You'll see the roll-up play, the sale-leaseback rent trap, and the zip code pricing that changes overnight when a competitor closes. Then I'll show you exactly how to audit your bill and delete the junk fees, spot corporate control in 30 seconds, negotiate a lower total without risking your child's care $1 million promise. By the end, you'll have a 7-day plan to cut $150 to $400 a month, protect your exit, and take back control. No joke. Problem: childcare is now a mandatory toll booth. Okay, let's be real for a second, because we need to talk about how the game has changed. Childcare used to be a local service, but now it functions exactly like a utility company. If you don't have care, you don't get a paycheck, and that is a massive shift in how we live our lives. When both parents are working, childcare isn't some optional luxury or a nice-to-have service. It's the work eligibility pass you're forced to buy every single month just so you can show up to the office. Just look at the massive bite this takes out of a normal family budget. The national average price for childcare has climbed to about $13,000 a year for just one kid, which is a staggering amount of money. If you're a single parent earning a median income, that means roughly a third of every dollar you make is gone before you even think about rent, food, or putting gas in the car. It gets even crazier when you have 2 kids in a center, because in 45 states plus DC, you're officially paying more for care than you are for a typical mortgage. For real though, that is absolutely wild when you stop and think about it. The problem isn't just the sticker price, but the way the entire system locks you into a corner. Those mile-long wait lists aren't just a line, they're leverage. You'll hit non-refundable deposits to sit on a list, then assessment fees before day one. Once enrolled, many big chains push 12-month contracts with 60-day notices. And the kicker: mid-year tuition increases buried in the fine print. That means they can spike your rate, and you still can't leave without paying 2 more months. Microclimax: you realize the contract is engineered so your choice costs you either way, pay more or lose care. That's how the toll booth wins. You really feel that financial pressure during the week you pay the bill, and realize your account still shows a mountain of upcoming charges. There are late pickup fees if you get trapped in a bad traffic jam, and convenience fees for using autopay with a credit card, even though the center requires you to use autopay in the first place. Then you've got the facility technology surcharges, just so you can receive the daily photos they told you were included in the base price. It's honestly death by 1,000 line items. And while most people think the tuition is the final number, that number is really just the starting point. Care has also become incredibly scarce lately, which gives these companies even more power over your wallet. A ton of centers closed down during the pandemic and government subsidies started winding down, but the demand for spots never actually dropped. In most big cities, a handful of massive chains and regional corporate groups now set the market rates for everyone else. If a small competitor shuts down 5 miles away, you'll suddenly get a letter about a cost of care adjustment appearing in your inbox. It might sound like simple inflation, but it's actually just demand-based pricing hidden behind a pair of kid gloves. This is where the participation tax really starts to hurt families. When the cost of childcare spikes past what the second parent is earning, families are forced to make some incredibly difficult choices. Do you keep working just to send 30% of your take-home pay straight to a corporate center, or do you step out of the workforce entirely? If you leave, you lose your seniority, you miss out on raises, and your Social Security credits take a hit. That isn't a simple lifestyle decision. It's an extraction choice that compounds over time. If you pause your career for just 3 years, your future earnings curve bends downward for an entire decade. Here is where the situation gets really interesting and a little bit frustrating. Daycare is a labor-intensive business involving real humans and strict safety ratios, so it isn't like a software company that can scale for free. In a healthy and fair market, high tuition should lead to better staffing, more training, and a stable environment for the kids. Instead, Parents are seeing the exact opposite with high turnover, employee burnout, and constant room closures because of staffing issues. This happens because the business now behaves like a leveraged utility where the owners load up centers with high rent and aggressive growth targets. Your monthly bill is covering payments you never even see, like high-interest debt, lease escalators, and support fees for a central corporate office. Families feel like captives in this system because the product is mandatory for their survival. If you want to keep your paycheck, you have to pay the toll, and just like a water or electric bill, there's a base fee plus surcharges and penalties. The big difference is that there's no government commission capping these rates, so they charge whatever the market will bear in your specific zip code. Your kids also age in place, which makes it even harder to leave as the years go by. The longer you stay, the more the social frictions stack up with friends, routines, and nap schedules, meaning switching centers has a massive social cost on top of the financial one. Let's put some real-world numbers to this daily grind so you can see how it adds up. Imagine you're a couple taking home $6,500 a month, and infant care in your city runs about $1,350 per child. With 2 kids, you're looking at $2,700 right out of the gate, but then you add a $200 annual materials fee and a $25 security tech charge. Throw in a 3% card processing fee because they force you to use their online portal, and suddenly you're paying $2,850 every month. That is 44% of one partner's net pay, which is basically the same as renting a nice 2-bedroom apartment in many major cities. The scarcity of spots makes everything feel even more urgent and stressful. You might get a lucky offer from a cheaper, independent center, but the start date is totally uncertain and your current contract requires 60 days of notice. If you give your notice and that new spot falls through, you're stuck with 0 coverage and no way to go to work. If you don't give notice, you miss your chance and end up paying for 2 more months at the expensive place. It's a classic heads they win, tails you lose scenario that keeps parents trapped. Eventually, parents do the math and decide to step out of the workforce for a year to save on care. However, that's when the health insurance shifts, the retirement contributions stop, and you risk never getting back into your industry at the same pay level. That is the hidden cost that most online calculators totally skip over. The childcare toll doesn't just take your cash today. It actually taxes your future ability to build wealth. You'll even start to notice a mood shift at home because that kind of money stress always shows up in tiny arguments. You find yourself asking why there was a $45 late fee, and the answer is usually that the center closed a room early again while you were stuck at work. You aren't being careless with your money. You're just trapped inside someone else's predatory billing model. It's the same pattern we've seen in other corporate industries with junk fees and the total illusion of choice. The good news is that you can actually fight back against the system. But first, you have to see how the machine works. You need to know who actually owns your center and what is really driving your tuition increases every year. Once you see where the fees are hiding and why those market adjustments arrive like clockwork, you can actually start to plan. You can audit your bill, time your exit perfectly, and build a short list of better options. You can even push your employer to help cover the toll they depend on. Because if care is a work utility, the bosses should be helping to pay the meter. The machine, how private equity owns your childcare. Here's the play in one clean frame. National brands, KinderCare, Partners Group, Learning Care Group, American Securities, and Bright Horizons, public institutionally owned. Roll up local centers, then flip the real estate and standardize fees to hit EBITDA. Cute names stay. The spreadsheet takes over. The lever that locks your bill, Sale-Leaseback. If a chain owns buildings, new owners sell them to a real estate trust, then lease them back with 2 to 3% annual rent escalators. Add buyout debt on top. Before a crayon gets bought, your tuition services rent increases and interest expense. That's why cost of care letters outpace inflation. Rent and debt first, classroom second. How it shows up on your invoice, one unified EBITDA play, not random add-ons. Waitlist and registration fees, front-load cash and quarterly numbers. Tech/security platform fees, $15 to $35 a month for the app and cameras, recurring margin disguised as safety. Facility maintenance or materials surcharges, steady drip to pad revenue per child without a headline tuition spike. Card convenience fees, charge you to use the portal they require until you push for ACH. Centralization makes it fast. HR, payroll, curriculum, and billing get harmonized. Policies and fee ladders go copy-paste across cities. Zip code pricing and A/B tested offers tweak revenue per slot by neighborhood, commute routes, and competitor closures. If a nearby center folds, expect a program sustainability bump within weeks. It's airline pricing for nap mats. Utilization seals the margin. Rooms run at legal ratios all day. Floaters vanish. Overtime bans appear. If someone calls out, rooms combine for staffing. Dashboards look efficient. Burnout and churn rise. Parents absorb the chaos because losing a spot is worse. That loss aversion is part of the model. Quick tells you're inside the machine. Identical handbooks and fee names across different brands. Long notice periods, auto-renew language, and mid-year hike clauses. Directors who need corporate approval for anything real. A new security/maintenance fee followed by a 4% hike, while raises freeze. Your countermoves, tight and tactical kill card fees. Move to ACH in writing. Ask for a tuition credit if they require the portal. Audit and opt out. Decline text/enrichment/materials bundles you didn't request. Ask for itemized statements and remove optional charges next cycle. Anchor the rate. Collect quotes via web, phone, and tour. Lock the lowest and ask for a 12-month hold with fees waived. Time the ask. Negotiate at low occupancy points. End of quarter, open slots. Bring 2 real competitor quotes. Add a parity line. If this room is offered lower to new families, adjust our rate to match. Bottom line, the big 3 wrote the template. Regionals follow it. Sale-Leasebacks and debt set your floor. Junk fees and ratios protect the spread. Once you see it as one machine, not random pain, you can negotiate packages that trade your predictability, renewal, ACH, school day hours, for lower all-in cost. The invisible algorithm, dynamic pricing for toddlers. Childcare pricing isn't fixed. It moves like airline seats. Same room, same teachers, 2 different quotes, because a quiet algorithm is steering the numbers for revenue per slot. Social proof twist. Parents in your own zip code are likely paying different rates today for the same room. It starts with zip code bands. Corporate sets market-adjusted tuition by neighborhood income, commute routes, and nearby employers. Fewer competitors within 10 minutes? Price nudges up. Major hospital or tech campus nearby. Expect program sustainability letters. It's not personal. It's segmentation built on census and rent data. Then you have to deal with surge logic, which kicks in if a competitor down the street suddenly shuts its doors. When waitlists jump and tours start spiking, the system sees that occupancy has crossed a certain threshold and nudges the price up by $25 or $50. They like to call this demand alignment or program sustainability, but it's really just the same classroom and the same crayons costing more because the local map changed. Even the lead funnels on their websites are being A/B tested to see how much you are willing to pay. If you fill out a web form on a Tuesday morning, you might see a lower rate with a deadline to tour by Friday to lock it in. However, if you call on the phone, the director might read from a script with a higher number and a much shorter window to decide. I've seen parents use 2 different email addresses to inquire and get 2 completely different quotes for the exact same toddler room. That discount they offered wasn't a gift. It was just a test to see if you'd bite. The amount of time you spend on their website actually matters because the system is tracking your behavior. If you spend a long time on the infant tuition page and then leave without signing up, the system tags you as being price sensitive. The next time they contact you, they might offer a limited time registration fee waiver to get you back in the door. This allows them to keep the higher base tuition rate while giving you a small carrot to make you feel like you're getting a deal. There is also a sneaky tactic involving birthday cliffs where the price changes as your child gets older. If your child is turning 2 next month, they might show you a preview rate that looks pretty reasonable at first glance. But if that age transition happens to line up with the end of a financial quarter, corporate might push a tiny price spike right when you get the classroom progression letter. You'll think the price jump is just because of the new age group, but it's actually a timing window they use to hit their internal revenue targets. Those annual cost of care letters are framed as keeping up with inflation, but the math often doesn't line up. If inflation is 3% and your hike is 5%, that extra spread isn't crayons. It's rent escalators, interest costs, and margin targets bundled into one line. Call it what it is, the investor spread. So, How do you actually fight back against this invisible pricing? You have to pull it into the light using 3 specific tactics. First, try rate anchoring across different channels by getting quotes through the website, over the phone, and in person. Ask for the exact same schedule and start date every time to see if the numbers stay consistent. If you find a lower number in one of those spots, forward it to the director and ask to lock that rate in for the next year with the extra fees waived. You are testing the price elasticity that they assume you aren't savvy enough to notice. Second, you need to pay attention to occupancy timing by asking the director how many spots are currently open in the toddler room. If they seem hesitant to give you a straight answer, follow up by asking if they have any special promotions for families who tour this month. The algorithm usually loosens up during months when occupancy is low, so the end of a quarter with open slots is your best window to negotiate a lower base rate. Third, you should try to get a rate parity clause added to your contract when it comes time to renew. This is just one sentence stating that if the tuition for your room decreases or is offered lower to new families, your rate will be adjusted to match. Corporate might not always sign off on it, but it shows them that you know how the game is played and that you are watching their pricing moves. I have seen parents successfully get this language into contracts at major chains that claim they never negotiate. You should also use your child's birthday to your advantage during these negotiations. If the move to a new room lands near the end of a quarter, ask to move the date by a couple of weeks in exchange for keeping the lower price band. If you frame it as being better for your child's transition and continuity, the school will often agree to it. For an infant moving up to a toddler room, that small shift can save you over $100 a month. Finally, don't be afraid to use competitor leverage without actually bluffing about leaving. Bring in 2 real quotes from other local centers and tell the director you'd prefer to stay for the sake of continuity. Tell them that if they can match the price and remove the extra tech or materials fees, you will sign on for another 12 months. This shifts their focus from trying to capture new demand to protecting the customers they already have. And that is exactly where the algorithm starts to bend in your favor. Once you name these tactics, you stop feeling like you're crazy because you realize it's just a game of price discovery. Squeezing the classroom, labor cuts, and quality risks. This is where the spreadsheet hits your kid's day. When corporate pushes revenue per child up while freezing labor per child, the classroom absorbs the blow. You'll feel it as constant low-grade chaos that never showed up on tour. Psychological hit, uncertainty fatigue. Parents tolerate more just to avoid disruption, another lever in the model. The problem starts with pay because when wages stay low, the best teachers eventually walk away. We've all seen it happen. Talented educators realize they can make more money working at Target with a predictable schedule and way fewer diaper changes. To fill those gaps, centers often hire less experienced staff or use part-timers to avoid paying out benefits. They might harmonize those benefits, which is just a fancy way of saying you have to wait longer to get health insurance and you get fewer paid days off. Morale takes a nosedive, and that's when the scheduling games really begin. You'll notice ratios creeping up toward the absolute legal limit. If the state law says 1 adult can watch 4 infants, the center will run at exactly 1:4 all day long to maximize profit. They often cut the floaters, those amazing extra helpers who jump in to fill gaps, just to keep the labor numbers looking pretty on a corporate dashboard. When a teacher calls out sick, the whole system breaks, and you'll show up to find a handwritten sign saying the penguins and turtles are hanging out together today. It sounds cute, but the reality is more kids per teacher, less individual attention, and a much faster path to accidents. Then comes the scripted curriculum, which is usually sold as a high-tech upgrade for your kids. In reality, these binders and tablets are designed so less experienced staff can just follow a script, allowing the company to hire people at much lower wages. While it standardizes the lesson plans, it also kills the soul of what skilled educators do, like reading the room or spotting a developmental delay early on. When the goal is just to cover the plan, the child has to fit the program instead of the program fitting the child. Planning time is usually the next thing to go. Teachers end up prepping for the next day during their own time or while the kids are napping because the ratio math doesn't allow for a single second of slack. Materials show up in prepackaged kits that look efficient, but they actually lock teachers into a box. If your kid has specific sensory needs and the solution isn't in the official kit, the teacher's hands are tied. The message from the top is loud and clear. Follow the system, not your craft. To squeeze out every last cent, shifts get fractured into weird blocks. You might see split shifts or unpaid half-hour gaps where a teacher is asked to work a few hours in the morning and then come back for the afternoon rush. Commuting eats up their whole day, their take-home pay shrinks, and burnout becomes inevitable. Because turnover is so high, new hires often start with almost zero training, meaning their first month on the job is basically live practice on your toddler's time. Everything falls apart the moment staffing dips even slightly. You'll get a push alert at 3 p.m. while you're in the middle of a meeting saying the center is closing early. You end up sprinting to your car, hitting traffic, and paying a late fee anyway. It's easy to get annoyed at the teacher standing at the door, but it's not their fault. You're looking at a brittle labor model that is literally cracking under the pressure of profit margins. Safety is where this gets really scary. When you're running at maximum ratios, even a simple bathroom break becomes a total crisis. If a teacher steps out and there's no floater to step in, the room is suddenly out of legal compliance. To fix it, they might combine rooms for just 10 minutes or stretch out snack time to keep kids occupied. It might not be illegal if it's brief, but when you do that every day, it's a recipe for disaster. Less eyes on the kids means more falls, more bites, and more stress for everyone involved. Training usually gets trimmed down to the bare state minimums, and those nice-to-have professional development days are the first to go. Great teachers want to grow and learn, but instead, they get stuck clicking through online modules and checking boxes. Even the directors lose their power because they aren't allowed to offer raises to keep their best staff from leaving for the school down the street. You'll watch your favorite teacher hug the kids goodbye and say they're going back to school, but you usually know there's more to the story. Sometimes closures are hidden right inside the school calendar. You'll see curriculum days or team building afternoons pop up suddenly, often right after a wave of staff resignations. It looks like a planned event, but it's usually just patchwork to cover the fact that they don't have enough people to keep the doors open. And the kicker? You're still paying full tuition for those days. Communication starts to feel different too. That personal text from a local owner gets replaced by a generic portal message signed by center support. If you have a concern, you're told to submit a ticket rather than having a real conversation. Everything becomes polite, distant, and corporate. Meanwhile, your child is struggling because their morning teacher changes every single week. Routines fall apart, kids start regressing, and suddenly bedtime at home becomes a total nightmare. So, what can you actually do about this? I've got 3 moves for you. First, keep your eyes on the ratios. Ask the director what their target ratio is versus their actual ratio at different times of the day. If they just repeat that they follow state law, ask them what their scheduling buffer looks like. You want to hear that they staff below the maximum and always have a floater available. If they don't have a good answer, take note of that. Second, ask about the staff. Find out how long the lead teachers have been there without making it weird. If nobody has lasted more than a year, that is a massive red flag. Ask if the director has the power to give raises on their own. If every financial decision has to go through a corporate office, you should expect constant turnover. Third, push for real planning time. Ask when the teachers actually get to prep their lessons. If the answer is during nap time, you can bet the quality is dropping. You can even ask to see a photo of the weekly lesson plan just to make sure that planning time is being protected. Finally, be an advocate for the people actually watching your kids. Bringing snacks is great, but you should also tell corporate, in writing, that you'd rather see a $1 an hour raise for the aides than a new app feature. Directors will often forward those emails up the chain of command. If enough parents make noise, things actually start to move. At the end of the day, you simply cannot get high-quality care out of low-quality jobs. If the spreadsheet is squeezing the classroom is going to squeeze your kid. And trust me, you're the one who's going to. Feel that stress when you're trying to get them to sleep at night. From community care to corporate care, a short history. Let's do a quick bit of time travel so you can see how we got here. Back in the 1970s, more moms entered the workforce and dual-income homes became the norm. The old patchwork, co-ops and grandma buckled. Churches and YMCAs filled gaps with half-days and loose rules. Messy, local, cheap. By the 1980s and 1990s, demand exploded. Employers needed reliability. Cities tightened safety codes, good for kids, expensive for operators. That's when the first big chains saw daylight. Standardize the room, the snack, the schedule, sell predictability. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the sector professionalized. National brands like KinderCare and Bright Horizons grew by acquisition. Finance spotted two businesses, classrooms and real estate. Split them. Sell the building, lease it back. Expand fast. Lock in rent escalators. That's when your tuition started paying landlords you'll never meet. Then the 2010s arrived with cheap debt and low rates. Private equity saw a fragmented market with captive demand, translation, parents must pay. Funds scooped up regionals and harmonized payroll, handbooks, and pricing. The Sunshine Grove logo stayed. The billing header did not. Then the pandemic hit in 2020 and changed everything. It forced classrooms to close and blew massive holes in the budgets of small, independent centers. While government relief helped for a while, many of those mom-and-pop shops couldn't survive once the subsidies disappeared. The big chains with deep pockets stepped in and bought those failing locations at a massive discount. Consolidation didn't just continue, it accelerated under the guise of providing stability. At the same time, massive employers started using childcare as a way to lure people back into the office. Companies like Bright Horizons signed huge contracts to run centers specifically for hospitals and tech campuses. While that's great if you work for a tech giant, it actually makes things harder for everyone else. When a hospital center sucks up all the best teachers by offering better schedules, the independent school down the street loses its staff and has to cut its hours. Now, I'm not saying there was some golden age where everything was perfect. There were plenty of unsafe centers and underpaid staff back in the day too. But the shift is important to understand. We went from a community-based patchwork to a world of leveraged portfolios where rent and interest are baked into your monthly bill. Regulations helped raise the floor for quality, but the finance side of things raised the floor for the price. The final trick is the branding. These big corporations have learned how to look local. They'll keep the colorful murals on the wall and sponsor the local fall festival, so you don't notice the spreadsheet driving the decisions from 1,000 miles away. That's why you have to check who actually owns the place. When the contracts and the fees look identical across 5 different local centers, it's not a coincidence. The incentives have changed, and once you see how the money flows, you can finally tell which levers you can pull and which ones are controlled by Wall Street. Micro-stories, the parents, the teacher, the insider. Lauren and Chris, Denver. 2 kids under 3. 2 solid paychecks. Daycare bill bigger than their mortgage. Base tuition looked painful but doable. $1 for 75 infant. $1,365 toddler. Until the skim kicked in. $25 tech fee. $18 maintenance. $220 materials spread monthly. 3% portal fee because card required. Their $2,840 turned $3,018 before snack time. Lauren did the math. Her $3,400 take-home was basically daycare rent, so she could keep working. They tried to switch to an indie center, $260 cheaper. Trap, 2-month wait there, 60-day notice here. Give notice and risk no care. Don't give notice and pay 2 extra months at the high rate. Heads they win, tails you lose. Then the toddler room started closing at 4:30 for staffing. Chris ate $105 in late fees across 2 days, even after proving the early closures. That night they talked about one of them quitting for a year. Her boss called it a break. It wasn't. It was a career tax disguised as childcare. Jasmine, lead teacher. 7 years. CDA. Magic with toddlers. After the buyout, benefits were harmonized, cost up, time off down. Binders arrived. Tablets arrived. Judgment got replaced by scripts and kits. Ratios ran at the legal limit. Floaters vanished. One call out, and she was alone with 11 toddlers and a brand new helper who didn't know the routine. Bathroom breaks became logistics. Implementation fidelity meant the app, not the kids. She stayed late, unpaid, to log bites and bumps. Rent climbed. Her raise offer, 75 cents, pending regional approval. That was the line. She applied to a school with day 1 benefits. On her last day, she handed parents handwritten notes with each child's nap tells. She cared. The system didn't. Todd, finance. Mid-level. He joined to create value in a sector that helps families. First deck he built had a slide he can't unhear now. Toddler EBITDA. Targets, 18-month ROI, plus 5% growth per center, 30% margins. Playbook, sell the buildings, sale-leaseback, lock in rent escalators, push revenue per child, test fees, hike wealthy zip codes, upsell security tech. When a nearby center closed, pricing bumped $40 because they knew parents had nowhere else to go. A regional called, out of ratio 20 minutes, no floater. Todd modeled more staff, leadership cut it. Post-subsidy, with rates rising, HQ demanded plus $14 per child per week, company-wide. He asked if any of it went to wages. Shrug. Benchmarking. He quit after seeing a baby's first steps watermarked by a security upsell. He kept the Toddler EBITDA slide as a reminder. Childhood turned into a line item. 3 snapshots, same machine. Mortgage-level bills for parents. Scripted burnout for teachers. Dashboards that price your kid's spot like an airline seat. Once you see it, you stop blaming yourself and start playing to win. Contract traps. Fine print that pins you down. This is the part where those little paper cuts turn into actual handcuffs. You have to realize that your contract isn't just a list of rules. It's a suit of armor designed to protect the company's revenue. If you read it once, read it again with a highlighter in your hand. You're looking for 4 specific traps that keep your money flowing to them even when the service starts to slip. The first trap is the auto-renew clause that they usually hide under a friendly annual enrollment heading. It sounds like a routine update for the new school year, but if you look at the fine print 2 pages down, you'll find a 30 to 60-day notice window. If you miss that window by even a single day, you're locked in for another full year at whatever new price they decide to charge. To fix this, you should add a sentence when you sign that says no auto-renew. Renewal requires mutual written agreement. If the center won't let you change the text, just set a calendar alert for 90 days before the term ends and send a notice anyway, since you can always take it back if you decide to stay. The second trap is a withdrawal notice period that is longer than the time it takes to start at a new school. A 60-day notice is pretty standard, but since daycare spots are so rare, it basically blocks you from leaving for a better option. The center knows that you can't afford to pay for 2 places at once while you wait for your notice to run out. Your best move here is to ask for conditional notice, which means you give notice now, but it only counts if your new center confirms your spot in writing. If they won't go for that, try to negotiate a buy-down, where you pay for 30 days instead of 60 because you're bringing them a new family to fill the spot. The third trap involves those non-refundable deposits and slot fees that centers love to collect. These deposits are supposed to hold your seat, but in reality, they often just act as extra cash for the corporation. If you have to leave for any reason, you lose that money, and if you go on vacation, you still have to pay a hold fee just to keep your spot. When you're signing the contract, ask for 2 things. Make sure the deposit automatically counts toward your final month of tuition, and ask for 1 free week per year where you don't have to pay while you're away. If they hesitate, tell them you want it for major life events like a new baby or a job move, because centers almost always approve these things if you ask before there's a problem. The fourth trap is the clause that allows mid-year tuition increases at any time with notice. This one can absolutely wreck your monthly budget because the $1,450 you agreed to can turn into $1,550 next month due to market adjustments. You should try to counter this with a cap that says annual increases won't go over 5% during your term. Even if they won't sign a cap, many centers will agree to a grace exit window that lets you leave without a penalty within 10 days of a price hike. That's your emergency exit if the cost gets out of control. You also need to watch out for the payment processor maze. Many contracts force you to use a third-party app that adds convenience fees while banning other ways to pay. This is a total double dip on their part. Ask them to add a line saying that ACH transfers are available at no extra cost and that credit card fees are waived if they require autopay. If they won't change the contract, send an email to the director confirming that you'll be using ACH without fees and save their response. Those emails are your best evidence if they try to sneak extra charges onto your bill later. The language they use for disputes really matters too. A lot of contracts claim that all payments are final, but that isn't true if the service they're providing actually changes. You should add a short note saying that if the classroom closes for a certain number of days, or if the ratios break state laws, you get a refund or the right to leave immediately. Even a watered-down version of this gives you a lot more power if things go sideways. Don't ignore the arbitration and venue clauses hidden in the back of the pack. Some of these companies try to force you into private legal battles in a different state, which makes it almost impossible for a normal parent to complain. Ask to cross out any out-of-state requirements, and make sure you can use small claims court in your own county for smaller disputes. Just keep the conversation boring and professional by telling them you just want a simple path for both sides if there's ever a misunderstanding. They also love to use force majeure clauses to protect themselves from everything from snowstorms to power outages. That's fair enough, but sometimes they try to sneak staffing shortages into that list. If a pipe bursts, that's one thing, but if they can't keep teachers because the pay is too low, that shouldn't be your financial burden. Make sure to clarify that staffing issues don't count as an excuse to keep your money while they're closed. If you've already signed a bad contract, don't panic because you still have some cards to play. You can use renewal time to add new rules, or you can send a policy acknowledgement letter that clarifies your notice dates and fee waivers. When a price increase hits, send your grace exit email within 48 hours and tell them you're leaving without a penalty because the terms changed. If they try to fight you, just attach their previous emails and mention that you'll be talking to state licensing about any safety issues you've seen. Finally, remember that there is power in numbers. If you can get 3 or 4 other families to ask for the same things, like free ACH payments or a grace exit window, the center is much more likely to listen. Corporate offices might say no to one person, but they usually cave when 10 families start asking the same questions. A calm and organized paper trail is always going to be more effective than 100 angry messages in a portal, and it's the best way to turn a trap into a fair deal. The macro hit: labor force, inequality, and birth rates. Now, let's zoom out for a second. When childcare starts acting like a high-priced toll booth, it doesn't just wreck your family budget, it actually reshapes the entire economy. We have to start with the labor force. When the cost of care starts eating up a second paycheck, mothers are usually the first ones to step back because that is still how most households handle the exit strategy. You might see a 1-year pause on a resume, but the real damage is how that loss compounds over time. Taking that year off erases your raises, bumps you off the promotion ladder, and even shrinks your future Social Security credits. Companies lose their best mid-career talent, and teams lose their rhythm, which causes productivity to slide. The wild part is that replacing a trained employee costs way more than just funding a childcare stipend would have in the first place. That is basically a dumb tax we all pay for ignoring care as a basic work utility. Wage growth gets swallowed up too. If you get a 4% raise but your cost of care letter says prices went up 5%, you didn't actually get a raise, you just tipped your entire portfolio to the daycare center. This is exactly how career mobility stalls out. For families living below the median income, the squeeze is just brutal. After paying for rent, gas, and groceries, there is nothing left to buy that ticket back into the workforce. This forces lower-wage parents to patch things together with informal, unstable care from neighbors or cousins, but those setups collapse at the slightest shock. 1 week of the flu and your work hours disappear, or one shift change happens and the whole fragile system breaks. This is exactly where inequality starts to widen. Higher-income families can afford to pay the toll, hire backup help, and keep their careers gliding along without a scratch. Meanwhile, lower-income families are stuck facing endless wait lists, 60-day notices, and rigid hours they can't change. The same childcare policy hits different wallets like 2 completely different laws. Since early education gaps open up so fast, the kids are the ones who feel it next. Having uneven access to stable, language-rich care shows up later in kindergarten readiness and 3rd grade reading levels. We like to pretend this is just about personal budgeting, but it's actually structural, and it's about who can afford the pass to stay in the race. Geography adds another layer of stress to the pile. In wealthy zip codes, centers are everywhere, employers help pay for slots, and wages are high enough to cover the bill. But in care deserts, a single corporate chain can basically own the local market and jack up fees. Every time a competitor closes down, parents end up driving farther, juggling longer hours, and handing over more of their check just to cross that same bridge to work. That time tax hits single parents the hardest. Remember how we talked about care taking 35% of a single parent's income? That isn't a sustainable way to live. It's a slow-motion eviction from the formal job market. Then we have to talk about birth rates. When the first kid costs as much as a college tuition, and the second one doubles your toll, people start delaying or downsizing their families. This isn't just about vibes, it's about cold, hard cash flow. You'll hear people say they're waiting until daycare costs drop, but the truth is they rarely ever drop. The decision shifts from, do we want another baby, to can we actually afford another slot? When you multiply that across an entire generation, you shrink the future tax base that funds literally everything. Fewer workers and more retirees means tighter budgets and higher pressure for everyone. We're basically living out the math in slow motion. Businesses end up paying for this twice. First, they lose money on turnover and absenteeism as parents fight against brittle schedules that don't bend. Second, they face a much thinner hiring pipeline a decade later because today's toddlers are tomorrow's missing engineers and doctors. While some big companies are smart enough to build on-site centers, many others try to free ride while parents struggle to patch care together at home. That might look thrifty on a spreadsheet until a key employee quits right at the end of the quarter because the toddler room closed early for the third time. That is a hidden cost that shows up on the real P&L. There is one comparison that really matters. In most states, care for 2 kids costs more than a mortgage. When the toll outpaces the roof, home buying freezes. That drags on growth. Local businesses lose workers to rigid center hours. Labor shortages deepen where care is scarce. Prices rise. If you want to talk inflation, childcare is in the chat. We also can't ignore the gender wealth gap. Stepping out of the workforce during your peak earning years cuts off your 401k matches, your equity vesting, and your bonus history. 10 years down the road, 2 resumes might look identical in terms of skill, but the pay stays very different because one person carried 3 years of an invisible care tax. That gap isn't something you can fix with a latte audit or by skipping avocado toast. It only closes when childcare isn't priced like a high-interest debt service. So, yes, this is your personal bill, but it is also our collective GDP. If we treat care like a leveraged utility, we get fewer workers, flatter wages, and lower birth rates. But if we treat care like actual infrastructure, we unlock the labor supply and finally stabilize our families. The good news is that you aren't totally powerless in this situation. You can actually bend these costs this month, use benefits you've already earned, and push your boss to share the meter. Let's get practical and look at the plan. Action plan. Cut costs fast, lock leverage, exit clean. This is your streamlined playbook. 3 pillars, all action. 7-day audit to cut fees and line up tax savings. 30-second ownership check to set your negotiation lane. Contract escape scripts to fix it or walk away clean. Keep it tight. Keep it in writing and move this week. Pillar 1, 7-day audit. Real savings in a week. Day 1, itemize and strip junk. Pull last 3 invoices. List, base tuition, tech, materials, meals, enrichment, processing, late fees. Email. Please provide an itemized statement by fee type for the last 3 months and remove all optional bundles, tech, materials, enrichment, effective next cycle. Switch to ACH. Confirm ACH autopay with 0 processing fees before next billing. Day 2, tax tools on autopilot if you have a dependent care FSA. Align big invoices to months when FSA dollars land. Missed open enrollment? Ask HR about qualifying life events, new baby, move, job change. No FSA. Track receipts now for the child and dependent care tax credit. Boring, yes. Free money, also yes. Day 3, build options. Shortlist 3 non-corporate providers, licensed in-home or indie centers, within 20 minutes. Pull inspection histories. Tour during pickup. Join waitlists. Ask, if we can start in a 2-week window, can we move up the list? Day 4, rate map leverage. Join 2 local parent groups. Collect current tuition sheets and fee lists by room into a Google Sheet. Tuition, fees, hours, ratios, subsidy. Patterns equals leverage. Day 5, employer dollars. Send HR a 1-pager. Absenteeism, turnover, late pick UPS. Propose a taxable stipend, $200 to $500 per MO, or reserved slots with a local indie, waive fees, hold rates. Offer to help run the pilot. Day 6, quality check on backups for your top 3. Ask, staffing buffer below max ratios? Protected planning time? Who's the floater? What's the coverage plan for callouts? Day 7, protect the exit draft 2 templates. Save as drafts, grace exit if terms change, mid-year hike, hours cut. Standard 30 to 60-day notice. Add calendar alarms for 90 and 45 days before auto-renew. Quick wins you can stack this week: ask for school day pricing if you consistently pick up by 4:30. Request sibling or 60-day hardship discount. Our bill increased by $160. Please apply sibling discount or a temporary hardship rate. Convert deposit to your final month's tuition. Credit every early closure. Log dates and minutes. Request credit against posted hours. Pillar 2, 30-second ownership check. Set your lane. Your question: local owner or corporate machine? It decides how you negotiate. Registry. Search the LLC on your state site. Owner is XYZ Education Holdings with an out-of-state address. Corporate. DBA Trail. Matching handbooks/fees across different brands. Corporate template. Building. Real estate partner or long-term lease equals sale-leaseback. Expect rent escalators baked into tuition. HR portal. Workday/national careers page. Centralized control. Your plays by owner type corporate. Trade predictability for price. Push ACH/no fees. 12-month rate lock. School day schedule and parity clause. Match lowest rate offered in this room. Independent. Lean into relationship. Offer first of month ACH. Bring diapers/wipes to drop supply fees. Ask for school day or sibling pricing. Always recap in writing after every chat. They're confirmed. Reply is your receipt. Pillar 3. Contract escape. Fix it or leave clean. Use the contract. Calm. Factual. Time-stamped. Step 1. Material change subject. Notice of material change site contract sections, hours, ratios, services. Log dates, early closures/ratio breaks. Attach screenshots/messages. Please confirm a remedy within 5 business days or a penalty-free exit. Step 2. Cure or release. If the issues cannot be resolved within 10 business days, confirm a fee-free termination and refund of our deposit for undelivered services. Step 3. Licensing lever. No drama. File factual complaints only for repeated safety/ratio issues. Email center. We've requested guidance from licensing and would prefer to resolve directly. Step 4. Money math. Ask for prorated credits for closed hours. Apply deposit to final bill. Waive admin/processing fees. Offer a replacement family with a start date. Step 5. Notice burndown if stuck with 30 to 60 days. Reduce costs. Switch to ACH, opt out of enrichment/tech, and request school day pricing during notice. Step 6. Bundle trades. Will stay 6 months if you lock our rate and waive materials/tech. Step 7. Escalate cleanly. Forward the thread to regional. Brief summary. Ask attachments. Subject. Resolution request. Step 8. Pay what's uncontested. We've paid tuition minus disputed late fees tied to early closures. Step 9. Lock it in writing. Please reply confirmed to finalize the fee waiver/credit/exit. Save PDFs. Copy-paste scripts. Cure or release. We need a written plan to fix these issues by Friday. If not, confirm a penalty-free exit and deposit refund. Prorated credit. Classroom closed Tuesday/Wednesday. Our child missed 10 hours. Please credit our next invoice. Fee removal. We're opting out of enrichment bundles effective today. Remove charges and credit prior payments. ACH swap. Switch our autopay to ACH with no fees before the next billing cycle. Confirm when complete. Replacement referral. The Miller family can start on the 1st. If you waive our notice, we'll coordinate a smooth handoff. If they stonewall, small claims works. Keep under the limit. Bring contracts, emails, and ratio logs. Most chains settle before hearing. Leave clean. Return key fobs. Share your child's routine. Thank teachers by name. Directors pass. Tone up the chain. Professional exits. Get future help. Community power. Build a local care market. Listen, this is where you stop just paying whatever price they tell you and start actually making the market work for you. You don't need to hire some fancy lobbyist to get things done. You just need a group chat, a shared spreadsheet, and a solid plan. Start small by finding 5 to 10 families who live within 15 minutes of you, have kids around the same age, and need similar hours. Give it a name like Northside Parents Care Group, because you're building a tiny powerhouse here, not just a place to vent about your day. Your first move is to build a local rate map, so you can see exactly what everyone is charging. Set up a Google Sheet with columns for the center name, the specific room, the tuition they post, and all those annoying junk fees. Make sure to include their hours, the kid-to-teacher ratio, when they close, and if they actually accept subsidies. Once every parent logs a recent quote with their receipts, you'll start seeing patterns in just a couple of days. You might notice the same tech fee popping up at 3 different brands, or find an independent school that's $100 cheaper. And that kind of knowledge is what helps you lower your costs. Next, you're going to take that info and bulk negotiate with the independent owners in your area. Send 3 owners the same note explaining that you have 8 families ready to start between August and October. Tell them if they reserve those slots and waive the extra fees while holding a specific school day rate for a year, you'll sign everyone up on staggered starts. Owners absolutely love having predictable cash they can count on, so you're basically trading that certainty for a better price. Don't forget to attach your rate map, so they know you've done your homework and aren't just guessing. If you can't find any open slots, it might be time to just make some yourself. Places like churches, synagogues, and community centers often have rooms that are already licensed and sitting empty half the week. Ask your group to do a Thursday evening walkthrough and bring along the state checklist for square footage and exits. If the space looks good, introduce a licensed in-home provider who wants to grow or a great teacher who's ready to run their own show. You can set up a 6-month microcenter pilot with 10 kids and a licensed lead teacher where everything is totally transparent. Parents can prepay every month through an automatic bank transfer, and the host gets some rent money and a ton of goodwill. Shared nanny co-ops are another great way to stay flexible when you need extra coverage. You should standardize the schedule, like every Friday from 8 to 4 for 5 families, and hire one vetted caregiver at a fair hourly rate. Use a household employer service for the payroll so all the taxes stay clean and legal. This ends up costing each family about $6 or $7 an hour, which might even let you drop your main center care down to 4 days a week. Create a simple rotation for backup care, so if the nanny calls out, one parent covers the first 2 hours and another takes the next 2. When you put the rules down on paper, all that usual chaos just vanishes. You should also use tools that make your little group look much bigger and more professional than it is. Use a free Slack or WhatsApp for quick updates, and keep a shared calendar for things like renewal windows or public hearings. You can even use a simple type form to collect interest for new sites, showing that you have 19 toddlers who need care by January. When you show a list like that to a business owner, it gives you massive leverage. If you show that same list to a local council member, it suddenly becomes a line item in the city budget. Now, you need to make sure your voice is heard in the rooms where the big money moves. When it's city budget season, have 2 parents sign up for public comment and show one simple slide about childcare costs in your area. Talk about how tuition compares to rent, and explain how a small amount of leftover grant money could fund several microcenter grants. Keep your asks very specific, like asking for faster zoning for care centers or fee waivers for fire inspections. Having 10 parents show up and say the same 3 sentences is way more powerful than one viral post that everyone forgets by tomorrow. Don't forget to bring local employers into your circle because they have a stake in this too. Draft a quick 2-page deck showing them how much money they lose when parents have to miss work because of childcare closures. Propose a simple stipend plan where they give employees a few $100s a month for care and offer to run the sign-up process for them. If you frame it as something that requires zero infrastructure but has a high impact, they're much more likely to say yes. You can even connect their HR department to local independents to reserve slots for their staff. Even while you're hunting for deals, quality still matters more than anything else. Your group should set some non-negotiable standards, like keeping ratios below the legal max and making sure teachers have protected planning time. Create a parent market standard on one page and hand it to every director you meet so they know what you expect. The centers that agree to your standards are the ones who get your business first. This isn't about being difficult. It's about making sure your kids are in the best environment possible. Keep everything friendly and honestly a little bit boring because you're just buying in bulk, not starting a fight. Celebrate the small wins when they happen, like getting a tech fee waived or launching a new Friday share. Post your redacted receipts so everyone in the group can learn from the process and rotate the tasks so nobody gets burnt out. Most importantly, thank the teachers loudly and often with gift cards or snacks. None of this works if the people actually looking after the kids are exhausted and unappreciated. If you stick with this for 30 days, you're going to start feeling a real shift in how things work. Centers will start calling you back faster, and independent owners will be much more willing to listen to your ideas. You might get a yes from a church for a walkthrough, or finally get that meeting with an HR director. That's what it looks like when a local care market starts forming. It's just parents setting standards and moving prices with calm, repeatable moves, and that's power you already have in your hands. Policy levers. Fix the incentives, not just the symptoms. Now we need to zoom out and fix the actual rules of the game, because coupons won't save you if the math is broken. If rising rents and corporate debt are what's driving your bill up, we need policy changes that flip the incentives. We want a system where the quality of care goes up while those annoying junk fees finally go down. It's about making the entire industry work for families instead of just for the landlords. We should start by looking at the money that's already flowing through the system. We need to tie public funding to actual pay floors for teachers, rather than just using it for fancy press releases. If a center takes public money, they should be required to show a clear wage ladder where aides and lead teachers make a living wage with automatic raises. You can pair that with tuition caps for those slots, so that raises for teachers don't just turn into higher bills for parents. We want our tax dollars buying more hands in the classroom, not just paying for some corporate dashboard. It is also time to ban junk fees once and for all. If a program is taking public funds or using tax-advantaged payments, they shouldn't be allowed to tack on extra charges for maintenance or processing. There should be one all-in price that is posted clearly so parents can compare apples to apples. We need plain English tuition sheets that show the price for every room and schedule, along with a 90-day notice for any increases. When prices are transparent, the power tilts back to the parents and the honest operators who are doing things the right way. We also have to stop the practice of sale-leasebacks in centers that get public subsidies. If public money is helping a site stay open, the building shouldn't be stripped and rented back with automatic rent hikes every year. We can use legal tools to make sure that if a property gets flipped for a quick profit, the subsidies turn into liens that have to be paid back. Keeping real estate costs predictable is the only way to make sure your tuition isn't just going to some landlord you'll never actually meet. Changing the zoning rules matters a lot more than most people realize. We need to create by-right conversions so that churches, rec centers, and retail spaces can turn into care centers without a massive headache. We should streamline the rules for parking and signs and offer small grants to help people get their buildings up to code. Scarcity in childcare is a choice made by policy, and the only real antidote is increasing the supply. When we make it easier to open a center, everyone wins. We should also start funding co-ops and in-home providers like they're actual startups. That means providing microgrants for licensing costs, shared payroll tools, and even basic things like mats and cribs. We need to offer technical help with budgeting and compliance so that these small businesses can actually thrive. If we make this process boring and repeatable across the whole state, every 10 new in-homes we license acts like a pressure valve for the system. It gives parents more options and brings the overall cost down. Another big step would be mandating tuition reporting so everyone knows what the going rate is. States should collect and publish monthly tuition and fees for every site, just like they do with hospital price lists. You could even add indicators for quality and how long the staff has been working there. When you shine a light on the numbers, it forces those algorithmic pricing models to behave a lot better. It's hard to overcharge people when they can see exactly what the center down the street is doing. Finally, we need to find better ways to use employer dollars to help the cause. We could offer a simple tax credit for companies that provide stipends or reserve slots with providers who pay their staff well. The process needs to be incredibly easy, like a one-page form and a quick payroll export, so businesses actually use it. Every dollar that comes from an HR department helps take the pressure off families. It also frees up public money to help the people with the lowest incomes who need it the most. When you fix these policy levers, the entire spreadsheet starts serving the kids instead of the other way around. It's about creating a foundation where providers can afford to stay open and parents can afford to send their kids there. We don't need more temporary fixes or one-time checks that don't solve the underlying problem. We need a system that is built to last and focuses on the people who actually matter in this equation. If we change the rules, we can change the future of childcare for everyone. Survival mode. Stop the bleed this month. All right, let's talk about plugging those financial leaks immediately. We aren't looking for a forever fix here, but we need to find some breathing room for the next 30 days. This is all about boosting your cash flow right now rather than trying to find a perfect long-term solution. First things first, you need to hit the pause button on all those little extras that add up. If things like hot meals, special enrichment classes, or extended day hours are separate charges on your bill, opt out of them today. You can pack lunches for the next 4 weeks and save a ton of money. And remember, it's just a short sprint to get your head above water. If your child has a specific allergy or a documented diet, you should ask for an exemption from meal charges so you can supply your own food. That's just a bit of paperwork, but it translates into real dollars staying in your bank account. Next, try to shrink your scheduled day to match what you actually use. Take a hard look at your real drop-off and pick-up times, because if you're consistently there from 8:45 to 4:30, you should ask for school day pricing. Even if that lower rate isn't listed on the official flyer, many centers have a cheaper quiet band for parents who don't need 10 full hours of coverage. You can offer them total predictability by promising to be out by 4:30 every single day, which helps them with staffing and lets you bank the difference. You should also look into rotating family, help to cut down on paid care days. Having a grandparent take over just one day every other week actually drops 2 full paid days from your monthly bill. If you don't have family nearby, try building a small nanny share with 4 or 5 other families to cover Fridays. You can hire one vetted caregiver and pay them through a payroll app to keep everything clean and professional. That one shared day allows you to cut your center care down to 4 days a week without causing total chaos in your schedule. When you ask for relief, make sure you're asking for things the director can actually give you. Sibling discounts are pretty common, but they are often ask-only perks that won't just appear on your bill automatically. Keep your request short and focus on the numbers by explaining that your bill jumped by $160 and asking for the sibling discount plus a 60-day hardship rate. Directors usually have a few small levers they can pull for parents who make calm and specific requests. You need to kill those annoying processing fees starting today by switching to ACH payments instead of using a credit card. If the online portal tries to force a fee on you anyway, send an email stating that you consent to ACH only if there are no processing charges. Save their reply for your records, and if they refuse to budge, ask for a monthly tuition credit that equals the cost of the fee. They have waived these costs for other parents before, so don't be afraid to make them say no to you directly. It is also time to run a micro-audit on your bill to see exactly where your money is going. List out every single charge for things like tech platforms, materials, security, or late fees, and then send one tidy note asking to remove optional bundles. You should ask for an itemized statement broken down by room and fee so that any billing errors finally come to the surface. It is honestly amazing how fast those junk line items disappear once the office knows you are actually watching the numbers. You can also save a lot of money by timing your payments to your flexible spending account. If you have dependent care FSA dollars available, try to align your biggest invoices with the months when those funds actually hit your account. If you missed the open enrollment period but had a major life change like a new baby or a job switch, ask HR to let you in mid-year. You should pair your FSA with the Child and Dependent Care Tax Credit and ask payroll which option puts more money back in your pocket. Another great move is to bundle your pickups with another family in your neighborhood. You can trade 2 afternoons a week where you grab both kids on Tuesday and they return the favor on Thursday. This simple swap lets both of you use school day pricing and helps you avoid those brutal late fees that eat your budget. Just set up a simple text rule with the other parents so that if someone is running late, you can just swap days tomorrow. Make sure you mark your renewal windows on your calendar right now so you don't get caught off guard. Put a 90-day reminder on your phone and draft a 1-paragraph notice template that you can save in your drafts. If the center announces a mid-year price increase, you want to be ready to hit send within 48 hours to keep your exit window open. This doesn't cost you a dime, but it gives you a massive amount of leverage if things get too expensive. You should also have a quick chat with your manager at work, but keep it focused on coverage rather than personal drama. Block off a hard stop on your calendar twice a week so you can get out the door and home before the late fees start kicking in. Ask for one remote work day while you are in this survival sprint mode and suggest a team quiet hour to avoid the 3:30 pickup rush. Most managers are willing to flex a little bit if you are proactive and give them a specific plan that works for the team. Try to negotiate a simple package deal with the daycare center that benefits both of you. You could offer to sign a 6-month renewal right now if they agree to waive the tech fees and lock in a school day rate for the duration. Directors are much more likely to say yes to a package that guarantees them a full classroom than they are to a request for lower raw tuition. You are essentially trading your predictability for a better price, and most of the time, they will take that deal. If your center keeps closing rooms due to staffing or illness, make sure you are actually using your credits. Every single time a room closes early, you should log the exact minutes and send a short, friendly request for a credit based on their posted hours. Don't make it a big confrontation. Just make it a routine part of your communication with the front office. These small credits might not seem like much at first, but they add up incredibly fast over a few months. Here is your quick checklist for the next 7 days to get things moving. Today, switch your payment to ACH, opt out of all the extra bundles, and ask for an itemized bill. Day 2, start packing those lunches for the month and ask the director about school day pricing. Day 3, call a grandparent or a friend to line up one help day and check the parent chat for a Friday share. Day 4, send that email to HR about your FSA options and see if you qualify for a mid-year window. Day 5, send your note about the hardship or sibling discount and ask for that 60-day relief rate. Day 6, get your notice template drafted and set that 90-day renewal reminder on your phone. Day 7, have the talk with your manager about your 2 fixed early exits and your remote work block. There are 2 more small moves that can make a big difference in your monthly total. Supplies. Offer to bring in your own diapers, wipes, and nap gear if the center charges a supply fee. Once you are providing the goods, ask them to remove the fee entirely because it's a fair and clean trade. Attendance. If your child is out sick for a while, ask for a prorated credit on your next bill. Many centers actually have a quiet policy for sick days that they only trigger when a parent asks for it in writing. While you are doing all of this, please remember to be kind to the teachers who are in the trenches with your kids. Drop off a small snack or a $10 gift card with a nice note to show them you appreciate what they do. When you talk to corporate, tell them in writing that you want your tuition dollars going toward teacher wages rather than random widgets or tech. Directors almost always forward those kinds of emails up the chain of command, and it helps the people who actually care for your children. You aren't trying to win the whole war against rising costs this month. You are just buying yourself some time. If you can stack just 3 of these moves together, you could easily shave $150 to $400 off your bill without sacrificing quality. That is real cash back in your pocket while you figure out your bigger long-term plan. Just take a deep breath and remember that you have moves you can make right now. Pattern recognition, the institutional grab playbook. All right, let's pull back the curtain for a second and look at the pattern because this is a movie we've seen before. Whether it's healthcare or housing, the rhythm is usually the same, and there are 4 specific beats you'll start to notice everywhere. Beat 1 is what we call the roll-up, and the pitch to investors always sounds exactly the same. They talk about a fragmented market with predictable demand and promise that they can provide quality through consistency. They start by buying 3 local centers, then 7, and before you know it, they own 40 different locations. The names on the signs stay cute and local to keep you comfortable, but the handbooks and fee sheets are suddenly coming from a national corporate office. You can see their fingerprints in the identical security tech fees and materials charges that show up across different brands. They keep the local mural on the wall, but they swap the local spreadsheet for a corporate one, and that is consolidation in action. Beat 2 is when debt and real estate issues start sliding under the classroom door. They use something called a sale-leaseback to turn the actual buildings into a steady stream of rent for investors. It looks really clever on a balance sheet because it unlocks equity and lets them expand faster. But that rent goes up every single year regardless of enrollment. When you combine that with the massive debt from the initial buyout, your tuition becomes the shock absorber for the whole company. When interest rates go up, you get a letter about the rising cost of care. But it isn't because crayons got more expensive. It's because their financial covenants don't care about circle time. They only care about the interest payments. Beat 3 is the explosion of junk fees that starts happening once the spreadsheet needs more profit. The goal isn't always to raise the base tuition right away because that's too obvious, so they focus on revenue per child instead. They start layering on non-refundable registration fees, platform upgrades, facility maintenance charges, and curriculum kits. Then they hit you with late pickup fees that cost $15 for every 5 minutes and convenience fees just for paying your bill. None of these costs are mentioned during the initial tour, and they usually land around month 3 when you're already settled in. They dress these fees up as enhancements, and they know you won't argue over $18 when you're already stressed out and busy. Beat 4 is the labor squeeze that pushes everything to the legal limit. You'll notice that ratios stay right at the legal ceiling. The number of floater teachers gets thin, and teacher planning time gets shoved into nap periods. This doesn't happen because the staff doesn't care. It happens because the math forces bodies onto the floor instead of behind the scenes. They start using pre-made scripts and kits to replace teacher judgment because those things are cheap to scale and easy for a corporate office to audit. Wages barely move while turnover spikes, and you start feeling it as temporary closures or a rotating cast of strangers at pickup. Quality gets brittle while your prices climb, and that gap between what you pay and what the teacher earns is the profit they are hunting. There are also some stealth moves they use to keep everything quiet and keep parents from complaining. They use local branding to hide national control, so you might get a pumpkin patch invite that uses the same Canva template as 3 other different centers. They also use algorithmic pricing based on your zip code, which means they might hike rates the second a local competitor closes down. If the price quote changes based on your start date or when you took the tour, that isn't just a vibe, it's a sales funnel at work. They frame childcare as a mandatory utility because they know you need it to keep your job, and then they use contracts to lock you into notice windows and auto renewals. If this all feels familiar to you, it's because you've seen it with your internet bill, your airline seats, and your streaming services. The institutional grab always follows the same house style where they start fragmented and then standardize everything quietly behind the scenes. They separate the operations from the property to extract rent, add a bunch of debt to chase growth targets, and then monetize the edges with junk fees. They squeeze labor to protect their profit margins and use local paint to mask the fact that a national corporation is in charge. Finally, they use ironclad contracts to harden their revenue and let the scarcity of childcare slots do the rest of the work for them. So, what are you supposed to do once you recognize this pattern? I think there are 3 main moves you can make. First, you have to assume the incentives are what they are. If a fund owns your center and they have quarterly targets to hit, you should expect price pressure and very rigid policies. Don't try to negotiate based on philosophy. Instead, negotiate for packages like fee waivers, ACH discounts, or rate locks. You can give them the certainty of a full slot in exchange for a more predictable price for your family. You should always try to trade with them rather than just pleading for help. Second, you need to find ways to route around these corporate choke points. Scarcity is what fuels their pricing algorithms, so increasing the supply of care is the only thing that breaks it. Things like co-ops, licensed in-home daycares, and microcenters in community spaces aren't just cute alternatives, they are actual market fixes. Every new seat that opens up in your community weakens the power of that market adjustment email you just got. Your local parent group isn't just for swapping tips. It's a way to build a counterweight against these big corporations. Third, we need to push for guardrails in the places where the spreadsheets actually live. We need total transparency on all-in pricing and wage floors for teachers that are tied to public funding. There should be clawbacks when big real estate deals extract money from subsidized buildings, and zoning laws should make it easier to open new seats. We also need employers to step up and fund stipends or reserved slots for their workers. This isn't about making one angry post on social media. It's about creating rules that make the right path the easy path for these companies. Once you see how the choreography works, you can stop taking every letter from the center as if it's an unavoidable fate. It's a cycle of roll-ups, debt, fees, and labor squeezes that we see in industry after industry. The antidote is always the same. We need more transparency, more options, and simple policy changes that point money at teachers and kids. We want our money going toward actual seats in a classroom, not toward rent escalators and corporate dashboards. The most important thing to remember is that this pattern isn't personal. It's just a machine doing exactly what it was built to do. Your real power doesn't come from yelling at the gears of that machine. It comes from changing the inputs and building a better lane next to it. You have already started that process just by paying attention to how this works. Now let's get focused and lock in your next 7 moves to take back control. Action checklist: 7 moves in 7 days. Alright, let's lock this. We aren't just learning, we're lowering your bill this week. 7 quick moves in 7 days. Small wins, real cash, more control. Scarcity flips in your favor when you act first. Let's go. Day 1 is all about the bill audit and your itemization request. I want you to pull your last 3 invoices and list out every single line item you see. We're talking base tuition, tech fees, materials, meals, enrichment programs, processing charges, and those annoying late fees. Once you have that list, send one short, punchy email to the director. Just say, please provide an itemized statement by fee type for the last 3 months and remove all optional bundles like tech and materials effective next cycle. While you're at it, ask to switch to ACH payments with 0 processing fees. Save every reply as a PDF because those are your receipts and your very first shave off the total cost. Day 2 is when we put your tax tools on autopilot. If you have a dependent care FSA through work, log in today and make sure your upcoming invoices align with the months when those funds actually hit your account. If you missed the open enrollment period but had a life change like a birth, a move, or a new job, email HR immediately. Tell them you're requesting a mid-year DCFSA enrollment under a qualifying event. If you don't have an FSA option, set a calendar reminder right now to file for the Child and Dependent Care Tax Credit. Start keeping every single receipt in a shared folder today. It's boring, I know, but this is literally free cash you're leaving on the table if you don't stay organized. Day 3 is for scouting, so I want you to shortlist 3 non-corporate options and get on their wait lists. Use your local licensing portal to find 5 to 10 licensed in-home daycares or independent centers within 20 minutes of your house. Pull their inspection histories to make sure everything is up to code. When you go for a tour, try to show up during afternoon pickup so you can see the real teacher-to-child ratios when things are busy. Join at least 3 waitlists today, even if your timing feels a little fuzzy. Ask every director the same thing. If we can start within a 2-week window, can you move us up the list? Believe me, families who show flexibility always rise to the top of the pile. Day 4 is when we build your power, so join 2 local parent groups and start a rate map. Post in your neighborhood Facebook group, next door, or even a local WhatsApp chat. Just say, hey everyone, I'm collecting. Current tuition and fee sheets by room. DM me a photo of yours. Drop all that info into a shared Google Sheet with columns for the center name, the specific room, base tuition, every extra fee, their hours, and whether they accept subsidies. Within 48 hours, you're going to have massive leverage. You'll probably spot an independent center that's $100 cheaper or find a hidden school day rate you didn't know existed. Day 5 is the employer stipend pitch. I want you to draft a simple one-pager that highlights the problem, like early closures and staff turnover, and the cost of lost work hours. Offer them a fix by suggesting a taxable stipend of $200 to $500 a month for parents. It requires 0 infrastructure from the company, and you can even provide a list of local independent providers. Email HR and suggest they pilot this for 25 parents over 6 months. Tell them you'll help run the signups and share the data. If a direct stipend is too much of a stretch, propose that the company reserves 10 slots with a local independent center to waive those junk fees for employees. Day 6 is your deep dive into licensing records and quality checks. For those top 3 alternatives you found, pull their full licensing files to look for incidents or corrective actions. You need to ask the directors some very direct questions now. Ask what their backup plan is when staff members call out, or what kind of protected planning time the teachers get. You also want to know who the floater is in the building. Remember, we want quality first and price second because you are not interested in trading your hard-earned dollars for daily drama. Day 7 is about protection, so draft your exit letter and set your renewal alarms. Create 2 versions, one for a grace exit if they change their terms on you, and a standard 30 to 60-day notice. Keep the tone factual and include dates, the classroom, and the specific contract lines you're citing. Save these as templates so you're ready to go. Then, add 2 reminders to your calendar for 90 days and 45 days before your auto-renew window hits. If the center tries to hit you with a mid-year price increase, you can hit send on that exit letter within 48 hours and walk away clean. Here are a few bonus stackers you can tack on this week to save even more. First, try to negotiate a school day schedule. If you're always picking up your kid by 4:30, ask for that school day rate even if they don't advertise it. It gives them predictable staffing, which is gold to a director, and it puts savings back in your pocket. You can also try a Friday share valve by messaging 5 local families. See if anyone wants to do a Friday nanny share from 8 to 4 o'clock. Splitting a $32 hourly rate can cut your center costs by 20% every single week. Don't be afraid to ask for sibling or hardship discounts either. Keep the conversation focused on the numbers by saying, "Our bill just went up by $160, so can you apply a sibling discount or a 60-day hardship rate while we adjust?" Directors often have a quiet lever they can pull for families they want to keep. You should also email them to convert your initial deposit into your final month's tuition. This turns that floating cash into a future credit you can actually use. Finally, get that payment method sorted out. Confirm they can do ACH with no fees before the next draft happens. If they insist on charging you for using a card, ask for a monthly tuition credit that equals the fee. Make them be the ones to say no to you. And please log every single early closure. Send a polite note every week listing the dates they closed early and ask for a credit based on their posted hours. Stay friendly, stay routine, but stay relentless. That is your week, and while it isn't flashy, it is focused. By Sunday night, you'll have a cleaner bill and a real exit plan. You're going to feel that control coming back, so let's get hustling. The most important thing to remember is that childcare has been turned into a leveraged utility that quietly taxes your paycheck every single month. If this video hit home for you, I want you to drop your city, your child's room, the base tuition, and every extra fee in the comments below. I'm going to pin a live community rate map so we can all start pushing back on these prices using real data. Make sure you subscribe to catch the rest of our bill audit series and grab that co-op starter kit in the description. After that, you need to watch our playbook on the utilities toll booth